done this yet, what we've been doing is I've been reading the draft as it exists, stopping section by section for comments, and then in the full discussion, we'll continue to flesh out what else we've got. So let me share my screen. You guys got that? Okay, and away we go. Section 16, Renewable Energy and Conservation and Energy Conservation. 16.1, Overview of Energy Use in Thompson. Before I begin, guys, let me just say this is super, super, super general. This usually takes me a couple stabs at this until I can narrow it down to Thompson, but these last few sections, I've been, my time to work on them from week to week has been very compressed. So hopefully part of what we can do is make this less general and more specific. According to the Connecticut State Energy Profile compiled by the U.S. Energy Information Administration, hyperlinked here, roughly 44% of Connecticut households use fuel oil or other petroleum products for home heating, and 36% rely on natural gas. Thompson does not have infrastructure to support natural gas, meaning property owners are limited to oil, propane, electricity, or wood for heat. Statewide, just over half of all electricity is generated by nuclear power, 51.5%, the bulk of which comes from the Millstone Station. 40.8% comes from natural gas, and 5.5% is generated via renewable energy sources. As of May 2020, 80% of the 688 megawatts of solar photovoltaic electric generating capacity installed in Connecticut was at small scale, less than 1 megawatt, customer-sited facilities. Connecticut has one of the least energy-intensive economies, using less energy to produce each dollar of gross domestic product than all other states except California, Massachusetts, and New York. Average annual per capita energy expenditures for the state are $3,960, ranked 25th in the nation, and less than half the amount spent per capita in the three most expensive states, Wyoming, North Dakota, and Alaska. At the same time, Connecticut residents pay the highest costs per kilowatt hour of the 48 contiguous states, with only Alaska and Hawaii bearing higher kilowatt hour rates. The current average retail price, cents per kilowatt hour, for electricity supply and delivery for Connecticut and its immediate neighbors by Eversource, the only carrier available to Thompson residents, is shown below. And there we are, Connecticut, highest in the nation, 18.66 cents per kilowatt hour, Massachusetts 18.40, Rhode Island 18.49, and then a big drop for New York, 14.34. As shown in this comparison, Connecticut's costs for energy delivery are consistent with other New England states. Also consistent with the New England region is Connecticut's relatively low output of carbon emissions, 41st out of 50 states, and the District of Columbia at 33 million metric tons as measured in 2017, compared with 707 million metric tons produced by top emitter Texas. Regions where carbon emissions were shown to be significantly lower were, as a rule, areas where summer seasons were shorter and summer temperatures milder. One may therefore extrapolate that air conditioning during the hot months is a greater source of carbon emissions than is heating buildings during the winter. Connecticut's relatively favorable comparisons to other states in terms of energy consumption do not provide much comfort, however, to residents who receive high monthly energy bills. As has been noted in Section 7, Housing, a significant portion of Thompson's housing stock was built prior to 1970 and therefore may not be as energy efficient as homes built after that time. Older homes are more likely to have lower R values for insulation, single-pane windows, and older heating systems. Energize CT does offer energy audits for Connecticut homeowners to identify areas in need of improvement, and low or no interest loans are available to many homeowners to make needed energy efficiency upgrades through that program. Participation in the Energize CT program, however, is dependent on a homeowner being proactive and only operates on a house-by-house basis. A new challenge to Thompson residents and businesses has come to light more often recently. Weather trends have led to more frequent high wind events, and in 2020, Thompson suffered several multi-day periods of widespread electrical outages. The longest of these occurred over 7 days during the month of August. Thompson is served by Eversource, a private utility provider. Response times by Eversource for Northeast Connecticut were widely criticized during these events, especially in comparison to the more rapid service provided in Norwich by its public utility company. In years past, long-term outages have more typically been the result of heavy snow or ice storms. If climate change is generating more frequent windstorms throughout the region and throughout the year, with interrupted grid service a result, it will not be acceptable for Thompson's residents to wait until they filter to the top of the private provider's priority list. Relatively affluent homeowners may be able to install backup generators or solar panels with battery storage, but such measures are out of reach for low and moderate income households or renters. Renewable resources at both utility and small scale, less than 1 megawatt facilities provided about 5% of Connecticut's electricity net generation in 2019. Solar and biomass contributed almost equal amounts of generation and together account for about 3/4 of the state's total renewable generation. Hydroelectric sources provided about 1/4. By May 2020, about 690 megawatts of utility scale and small scale solar PV capacity had been installed in Connecticut. There are 3,871 residential and commercial parcels in Thompson, 3,679 residential and 172 commercial. Of that total number, 185 parcels have some configuration of solar panels installed, and of those, 180 are installations serving single locations and 5 are commercial generators. None of the commercial operations have a power purchase agreement in place with the town at this time. Thompson will be participating in an electricity offset arrangement with Fort Hill Farms once the anaerobic biodigester facility at that site comes online, anticipated for early 2021. That renewable energy project will be discussed more fully in section 16.6, except it's actually going to be 16.4. Comments on the overview? Go.
I think it's fine, Tara. I don't really have anything to add to it or take away. It makes me think about the school solar project though there, Lanky.
You got that right. I agree with you. They blew it. We had the best deal going. You will never see anything like that in this state again behind the metering virtual behind the metering thing. Eversource is not going to let that happen because they want to pay you 5 cents a kilowatt for you to to buy it from you, and then they're going to turn around and sell it back to you for 10. So they're making you're going to end up only cost you.
I mean, the one thing I think about as you're reading through this, I guess the phrase is more needs to be done, in my opinion. Right, to promote this.
I'm going to agree with you, Brian. I think you and I see from our perspective of what we are in our industry. Thompson, we got Thompson. We're always going to be the last one. Eversource is going to send all their resources to the Gold Coast or Hartford or New Haven or whatever. You got your so-called ritzy areas, I call it, and we're going to be the last ones. And, so we need to figure out how we can do where we can help. Like Wallingford, if you look at Wallingford, I mean, they got one of the lowest electrical rates. Now, figure that one out. When you go down that way, and you see what they're doing. They're putting up these couple little power plants and everything, and all that stuff. So we need to look at it.
Wallingford has a municipal utility, right? They're another one like Norwich.
Yes, but they got one. I think they got one power plant that they put up. They were supposed to have 3 of them, but 2 didn't make it, and they're creating their own power through a good size energy system. Where they're not selling it to outside sources. They're keeping it within, if I remember correctly, but that could have changed.
Dennis, what are your thoughts on this, just the overview? Does anything strike you as being out of balance?
No,
I'm still a little concerned about the generality of it.
No, I have no problems with it either. I think it's a fine intro, and yeah, there's nothing that really jumps out as being out of line. I'm happy with it.
The thing I'll add here, Terry,
Right.
is, I'm trying, like I said to you in email today, I'm trying to wrap my head around what is the real purpose of this document? Is it just to educate or provide data? Because in my opinion, like if someone's building a house, they should know that if you want to put solar panels on your house and you plan on being there for 20 years, then that is the right time to put solar, because the payback period, especially if you go into a PPA agreement, is about 15 years, right?
Mm.
You're not really seeing any money right out of the gate. So I feel like there's a portion of this that needs to tell people, like, a guide on what are good ideas and what are bad ideas. But I don't think that's the intent of this document.
Well, it's not the intent, although individual homeowners are not necessarily the main audience for this document either. So
Yeah.
obviously the fundamental purpose is that the state requires it.
Yeah.
But the primary users are the municipality itself as a priority setting document, and developers who are working in Connecticut are aware that towns have PoCDs, and they look for them to see what the standard is, because that helps developers put together proposals that are sort of pre-lubricated
Yeah.
to hit the community standard.
Yeah.
So it's not regulatory the way the zoning regs are, which has the granular detail of do this, don't do that. But it's laying out the priorities in a way that is not bound by some of the statutory restrictions in the zoning regulations. For
Yep.
example, having nothing to do with energy use particularly, all those conversations we had about whether P&Z had the authority to regulate for conservation purposes, right? And in some cases they did, and in some cases they did not. That doesn't apply to this document in terms of stating priorities.
Yeah.
So that's what this is for. And the trend over time, as I'm led to believe, as I'm led to understand, is that, 10 years ago when Kevin Kennedy did the last one, those finsy little ones were more or less the standard, or at least closer to the standard. The good examples of these that have been sent to me are all clocking in around, or most of them are clocking in around this length, 100 and some pages, much more in depth about this is who we are, this is how we've built out, this is how we want to build out. But wide variations within them in any case.
Kara, Dennis Blanchett here.
Yes.
Just a comment on what Brian just said. That might be a good thing to throw into the goals at the end, something about like reaching out to homeowners to educate them about the availability of this.
Oh, we think alike. I have already made in my little marginal notes, guide for homeowners in suggested action steps.
Kara, this is Joe Martino.
Yeah.
Hi, good evening. Couple of topics. I think you want to talk also, remember how we've talked in some of the other sessions to try to spin the positive, the biodigesters, a good example of that. But if you look at the water turbines, the amount of electricity produced by water turbines has more than doubled in the past 10 years in Thompson. If you look at the electrical supply generated by solar, I think you probably would say it's tripled in the last 10 years. So these are the positive things to spin. We also have in the hydroelectric sites, you have 3 hydroelectric sites that have been designated as potential for activation. They're not currently activated, but you have 3 very positive sites. You've got the Wilsonville Mill, has a 14 and a half foot head. You have the North Grosvenor Mill with its inherent challenges, but that dam also is functioning. You also have the Army Corps of Engineers. That dam, very similar to the Colebrook, where they retrofitted that for hydro. So you have potentials, sizable potential to generate electricity in town, if you did want to mention those options.
Okay, excellent.
Tyra?
Anybody else have anything on? Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, Tyra, just to address some of Brian's concerns, I look at what you just read to us as the goal post. 10 years from now, let us all hope that those numbers are even better.
Yeah, so this is our baseline from which we'll measure in 10 years.
Exactly.
I have a question and a comment. The first a comment, it came to my mind when Brian pointed out, or Brian and Mr. Lenke pointed out that we missed a golden opportunity to put together a program at our school. So the question is, and also with what Joe just pointed out about potential sites for hydro. So the question is, should we be looking to educate the Board of Selectmen and other town agencies like the school department so that they are thinking in terms that 10 years from now, we're going to double or triple or quadruple our renewable energy through any feasible and viable means that are presented, or even go out further, a municipal power system, like has been mentioned in a couple of other parts of Connecticut, to give competition or to replace Eversource.
Yeah, that's a good one too, Charlie. I definitely want to talk after we get through what has been drafted, which doesn't go that far, about that school project. And I don't know that I want to talk about the weird history of solar in Thompson in one sense, but I want to talk about it in this session because there is something weird going on with solar in Thompson, not just the school thing. Apparently some of these commercial, one of the two commercial producers that is located in town did in fact approach the town for some kind of PPA and were turned down. So I don't understand that. I don't understand why, and I'm sure there was reasoning behind it. But certainly at face value, I find that a bizarre choice to have made.
Yeah, it's funny. I went over to the Teague building the other day and I spoke with Ann over there and walked through the facility because my company, we're donated a bunch of toys to them for Christmas because people are just generally struggling. But anyway, besides the point, I think most people that are on the call right now know that they have a solar on their roof. And it is a PPA agreement. And I asked her how much it's costing her per month. And it's 5 cents a watt, 5 cents on delivery, which really aggravates me because I guessed at 6 cents delivery on that evaluation that I did months ago. But anyway, so I guess my point is that it does exist in the town. It's at the Teague building that was very much supported. And why would it be challenged on other buildings is truly beside me. I really struggle with that one. And I'm sure there's rationale behind it on why it's not being supported. I don't want to talk like that over the phone right now. But you know, I'm sure there's rationale behind it, but I also feel like there could be more support for whatever reason.
I agree, Brian. And I think that to simplify it is partially the empire building mentality that too many people get into.
Yeah.
It's not created here, so it's not worth it.
Yep.
And they have vested interests. And the other is that it's just, it hasn't been done in the past. And that's why I asked the question I did. How do we begin now so that 10 years from now, it is what the people in Thompson at the school department or at any other, the library or the transfer station or any place where we can generate some electricity and do it for ourselves.
Yeah. Well, Tira, as I sent you that document, just to share it with other people, I sent Tira Burlington, Connecticut's PoCD plan, because like I said, I was having a hard time wrapping my head around some of the things that should be discussed in here. But one thing that I really liked about theirs was it really outlines sustainability on a concept level in like 1 through 10 order. And concept number 1 was about promoting and thriving local economies, where they wanted the local businesses to support this type of sustainable energy, put solar on roofs, talk about biodiesel furnaces and things of that, and just come up with a workforce development plan that's promoting sustainability. And that was concept number 1. And it just really broke it down into 1, 2, 3, 4, and just I appreciated that very much on how they were delivering the message. They spoke about concepts, then the policies on how to take action on those concepts. And I know we're not looking at it on the screen here, but.
Well, I was just about to say. So Brian sent that to me relatively late in the day, and I only had a chance to glance at it. I will do 2 things with that document. One is I will forward it to everybody on this group. But when we get through this drafted part, I will pull up that and find that section that Brian's talking about, and we can take a look at it for comparison.
Yeah.
Anybody else have anything else on the opening overview?
I do, Tyra. This is Joe again. There's two things that are driving, I think, business opportunity in this space that should be mentioned. The first one is that the 45% reduction of emissions has to go into effect by 2030. That's the state rule for that. So that's the Climate Change Act from Connecticut. So that's number 1 opportunity is how is that going to be accomplished? Well, they're going to accomplish that by 40% of the renewable portfolio standard in the state. So it'll be 40% by 2030, which is going to be up from 20% in this year. So that means we have to get renewable energy much, much higher than we have today. And I think if you can mention that, those opportunities, we can generate and consume that right here in the town.
Yep.
I love that.
Okay. All right, moving on to 16.2, pretend that I am Alvin Hill. Alvin provided actually a really sort of fun and interesting personal case study just of one home in Thompson, his own, which he built. So Alvin, I took some time to sort of reformat it a little bit. The language is still fundamentally yours. If I got anything wrong in my cleanup, just holler at me. But imagine that I am Alvin Hill. As a firm believer in conservation of energy usage then as now, I designed and constructed my home in the 1980s. The electrical usage from November 2019 to November 2020 in total kilowatt hours is 6,347. Of that total kilowatt hour usage, 2,299 was consumed from June to August of 2020 for air conditioning, etc. How is this unconventional usage of electricity achieved in the design of the home? And the other thing that Alvin sent me, which I'm going to add into the document, is an illustration of some of his construction techniques later, which is, again, kind of cool and a nice thing to have. Brian, speaking to your point about telling people what they can do individually. For 23 years, I worked as a restorer of early American homes, 1650 to 1750. Married in 1980, my wife and I decided to build our home in Thompson. Most early homes designed and constructed in New England in the 17th and 18th centuries were based on English church and domestic conventions. Faced with a similar climate to England, the early New England builders were very conscious of heat loss and energy needs. One design that began in England and was later adopted in New England used vertical planks attached to the outside of the ground sill, continuing through top wall plate to attic space. The Anglo-Saxons during the period from 400 to 1000 AD used vertical full logs with inside facing shaved flat with the bottom sill notched joint and top notched joint for carrying beams in their early church wall design. This type of fabrication was brought to my attention by a book by Cecil A. Hewitt, an English author of English Historic Carpentry, 1980. Instead of using heavy solid logs, I chose to use 2-inch thick eastern pine planks set vertically into a 2-inch by 2-inch groove with 1 inch inside of the sill's flat plane for flooring attachment. The 2-inch grooves to receive the vertical planks were set in 1 inch from the edge of a 6 by 9 inch oak sill for future flooring. The wall design extended 2 stories, ending with modern roof trusses. In today's construction terms, the wall became a structural insulated panel, or SIP. With the walls up, the construction moved forward by attaching a 4 by 8 by ½ inch insulated sheathing that would enclose the entire SIP around the appropriate openings. With the walls and floors in place, work progressed to the exterior. At each of the 4 corners of the structure, 2 by 4 studs were placed 24 inches on center against the face of the ½ inch polyisocyanurate insulated surface of the vertical planks, adding sheets of 3-inch by 24-inch thick poly insulation along the length of the walls. With the corners of the structure braced, horizontal pine sheathing was added, then sided over with red cedar clapboards on front and back. The gable ends also received red cedar shingles. The final completed wall thickness is 10.5 inches for a 2-story structure. Flooring insulation used a combination of fiberglass, styrofoam, and polyisocyanurate sheathing. What does the wall thickness mean for insulated value? The house living wall area, R value, is 26.82. The foundation wall value is 2-inch in thickness styrofoam on the outside and inside with ½ inch poly, and over the concrete basement wall with 1-inch vertical pine board, R value is 11.92. Floor insulation from basement to attic ranges from R21 and to R30. During the winter, the main heat source is a wood stove drawing air from the exterior. The home uses roughly 1.5 cord wood over the course of a season. It is important to note with these R values, the structure would lose at least 10% of insulated heat gain value without the correct orientation and glass windows with a high energy value. For our latitude in Connecticut, 14 degrees southwest is the optimal orientation, meaning the longest side of the structure should face 194 on a compass dial. This is a one-of-a-kind structure, but it has withstood Connecticut weather for well for 4 decades, even having been constructed with the materials available in the 1980s. With today's high-density closed cell foam insulation, along with SIP and renewable energy from solar or geothermal sources, a residential structure can be entirely off-grid. That is a local case study. Alvin, did that all sound correct, read back to you?
That sounds correct. Yes, it does.
Okay. Not much we can add to a personal anecdote, of course, but does anybody have any observations here? I mean, we can certainly have commentary about it after the sort of the story itself here.
You're talking about, oh, he did it.
Okay, I like the last, one of the last thoughts there that said if it was done with today's standards, it could be completely off the grid. And I think that that's a point that we should be making for developers coming in, that even in this locale, it's possible to design and build houses that would be so self-contained. That's a big selling point.
Yeah, actually, Alvin did point out at the end that that Connecticut building codes do support construction of off-grid. I'll pop that back in. Off grid. Are you totally off the grid, Alvin?
No. As you
Okay.
see in the opening there, I used quite a few kilowatt hours of energy from Eversource.
Well, I didn't know if you, I didn't know if you had had solar up there and that you were taking those measurements yourself from your own system. Okay.
Well, you know, we talk so conveniently about solar, but as I pointed out to the Planning and Zoning Commission several years ago, I said to him, I would write some regulations for solar, but understand this. You're 50 years old, you spent your entire life in horse and buggy. And the other day you just happened to see a Ford B, not a Model T, not a 1932 engine. No, sorry. In other words, solar today, 14 to 16% efficiency. And that's only 9 months of the year.
Mhm.
And then over a 20-year period, we're losing 8% of that efficiency every 10 years. So in the 20-year period, you end up being 10.5% efficiency on a multi-$1,000 installment. I would install solar panels not on a roof, but on a ground mount. And when science, and hopefully along with A1, artificial intelligence, we should be able to remove the red and the green from the photon and just focus on blue and ultraviolet. In physics, that means we could have 40% efficiency. And if we could just change the quality of the glass so it doesn't deteriorate over a 10-year period, I think then, of course, if I were 25 years old, then I would certainly install solar panels.
Yeah, and that technology is definitely being expedited, Alvin, in my experience with putting 1+ meg systems on the schools that I build, where the energy efficiency is probably like 70+%. And then even after a 15 or 20 year period, those panels are still producing at 50% capacity and, beyond, right? But if I'm looking at what Alvin wrote here from a town perspective, I think the way I look at it is if there's a will, there's a way, and that will is supported by the town of Thompson. If you want to build a high energy efficient home, such as what Alvin did, or if you want to use high efficiency mechanical equipment in your home, or solar panels, or biodiesel, I feel like all of that should just be written down as the town is supporting those type of measures now and into the future, right?
I like that, yeah.
Yep.
Kara, you might want to double check with Brian LaFrido. He's got that new Tesla system in, and they are supposedly beyond state of the art. They really have figured out some angles that.
Well, he says he's got great storage capacity on that thing for sure.
Yeah, and as a footnote to what Alvin just provided, if that was just put in a footnote to say, yes, okay, and by the way, this is what the technology is up to in 2020.
Yeah.
Are you talking about the storage batteries?
Lafredo just had a brandy spanking new Tesla roof system put on with backup storage, and he's apparently seeing excellent results right away. In fact, he had that system put on, I think, shortly after, totally coincidentally, shortly after the 7 days of darkness over the summer. And he was like posting every other day pictures of his fully charged batteries at his house, which is pretty amusing. But yeah, I mean, the main point I think is well taken, that these systems have improved greatly in their efficiency and capacity, and certainly will only continue to improve I mean, I think there's all evidence that solar and other renewables are a growth industry for not just the distant future, but the near-term future. I think that's coming out legislatively. I think people's inclinations are turning that way. But again, to point out some things that have already been raised here, you want to make that information accessible to individual homeowners to understand how they can take advantage of it, and also indicate that we've got, you know, a platform of support for those measures, you know, whatever those happen to be. I mean, we wrote a lot of stuff into our solar regulations that I think are an improvement over what we had before, at least in terms of being able to follow how they were written. It doesn't mean that we can't go further, right? And certainly in this document, we can make lots of philosophical statements that are outside a regulatory structure. Anybody have anything else on this particular section?
Yes, I say yes to everything you just said, but I want to amplify from that point. You said focusing on the homeowner. We have to hammer on the Board of Selectmen and on decision makers throughout the town. So don't, you know, yes, okay, focus on the individual homeowners, but beyond that, when the town's administrative bodies are really supporting it, then we can be reaching out and getting federal guidance and state guidance, because it will come down. It will be coming down from on high. And if we have a document that is philosophically positioned to be ready for that, we're far more likely to roll the next step.
Agreed.
Tara, Miss
Yes,
Tara,
John Linke.
on the, I think it was 2 years ago, maybe, or 2.5 years ago, when Kenny Beausoleil was first selectman, he signed I believe the Board of Selectmen, and he signed it with a letter of intent to Fort Hill Farms to buy something like 400 kilowatts of power. You know what?
Yeah, it actually wasn't that long ago, John. It was shortly after I came on in the position. I know because I was at the meeting where the Board of Selectmen voted on it. And I had just been asking Kais if she had
I don't have
a
any
copy of.
Yeah, I don't even know. I don't have a copy of it. I think it was just word, you know, formal. I mean, informal, just talking about it.
Okay.
Well, it was definitely voted on. I
Right.
you know, I was there when they voted on it. So
Right.
the words exist in an official form. We
Okay.
want to get that in an official
Yep.
agreement, I think, Kais.
Yep. No,
Because-
I 100% agree. I wish the town was more willing to work with us, but I understand, you know,
Well,
it's,
we're hoping that it does. I'm for it with you. When Kenny talked to me about it, because those two other farms, those big, I think one is in Bristol, around the Bristol area, you might know, and one a little bit farther north from there, where they're running a 1 megawatt system. That
Right.
what you're putting in.
Yep.
Right? Would that be correct?
yep, yes, I think so. Yes.
They're pretty much self-sufficient.
Yep.
And selling off whatever they don't need. They've been selling it off. So it's been very, because Pura, our state agency, I know within the next 2 to 3 years, because I'm in touch with a few people, and with the solar systems, they're finally changing their minds about this whole renewable energy of what you're doing, and solar, with the farmers putting solar panels or fields, if you want to call it that, on a farm, but still get to use to do farming. In other words, the panels are put up a little.
Right.
Matter of fact, I got pictures of some up in what's the town? I can't think of it. It's up near Williamstown, and it caught my eye. I think I showed it to Tara. And these panels are on a remote pedestal, and they turn, and they're about 10 feet high or so. So the cows and the horses, whatever are out in the fields, can still graze, and they get to use the land. So it's not strictly taken away from farming. You know what I'm saying?
No, I agree. I think solar is a good, but as long as it's put in where agriculture is not
Hindered.
yeah, no,
Right.
agreed. You know, and I understand that, you know, the permit fee, you know, in a way, we pay, it's just, you know, as if another homeowner wants to do something and they have to pay a fee, you know, I understand, you know, but if, you know, our fee could be a little less than 40,000, then, you know, that was the exchange, you know, $40,000.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Kai, as you know, I'm totally with you on that. I was,
Yeah.
to put it in very polite terms,
Yeah.
very disappointed with the way that meeting went out, played out. And I know Kenny was too, but
I don't want to be favored, but, you know, we're giving you guys, we're trying to give you guys electricity. Could we, you know, make some exchange here?
What was the reason for the 40,000? I think I missed that part of the whole.
That was the times the how much the projects cost. Estimated project cost was $5.5 million.
Yeah.
The fee.
And then you do the building permit fee, and then the square feet cost, the state education fee, and the zoning fee all added up to 40,000.
Whoa.
yeah, it was quite a little price tag, and you know, it's sort of tangential to this discussion, but when we went into that meeting, because Kai's was working that night, so I was instant expert, just add water based on the presentation that she and her engineer provided to me. You know, even if the town had extended them a free pass on that permit, like the whole nut, the town still came out ahead based on the projection of the cost of the electricity that would be provided by the biodigester. That's if we went the whole nut. So and the further down you went, obviously, the more the town gained in call it profit, although profit isn't exactly the right word in terms of the energy offset cost. You know, so I mean, we were in there. Well, you know, if you don't want to go the whole 40, can we meet them halfway? Can we go 20? And the majority of the three selectmen at the time made the argument that we should not be treating any particular applicant differently than any other, which, given some of the other priorities we've expressed, was perhaps, I found it disingenuous. But it is what it is. It's voted on, and the project's going forward, and they're finding a way to do it. And it doesn't mean we can't revisit it again at some other time.
Tara,
But yes.
I think that's something that we need to look. You need to help bring out to us in the planning and zoning, so we can help certain people like this. I understand this young lady with Fourth Hill Farms, what they're doing, and I admire her for what she's doing overall with the farm from the early days. I give her credit. She's got a good foresight, and yeah, you're right. It should have been somehow negotiable, because you got to give a little to get a lot.
Would it help if we gave the planning and zoning a private tour of the digester?
I think P&Z would love to have a tour as a special meeting sometime.
Okay.
I can't imagine anybody wouldn't like to be up there. I mean, I've been up there, and it's fantastic, and it was just really just dirt and a big hole in the ground when I was there. But
different. I mean, by the end of Thanksgiving, it will look totally different. Every week's changing.
yeah, I mean,
Tyra?
again, it's tangential to this to a certain extent, but you've got my permanent support on that project, Kai, for sure.
Okay. No, I agree, and I appreciate. Let me know if the P&Z wants a tour, and we can set something up.
Alvin, you were saying something, I think?
Yeah, Tyra?
Yeah.
This idea should be at the state level. In other words, maybe these type of fees at $40,000, we can't exempt them, but the state could. If we want a biodigestion type of system, then maybe we should be approaching somebody like our state senators, our local officials, get on board and pass some legislation to at least cut these fees in half or less, just so it would encourage more and more of these type of developments.
I would definitely agree with that, Alvin, although in this particular case, it was entirely the municipality that was holding the bag on this one.
Well, I know, but it was minus legislation.
Yes.
That would come up.
And for whatever it's worth, we've been talking ever since this incident at Economic Development Commission about developing a matrix by which we can incentivize worthy projects. In other words, what are the benefits that the municipality or the community in general sees from a given project? Some way to create a formal process of incentivizing that therefore doesn't look like it's a one-off every time, so that there's structure to it. That hasn't quite come about, but I think that's a short-term project for EDC, and we've discussed that elsewhere in this document as well.
Ms. Terry, I think Pura has a lot more to do with that. They're the ones that set the fees and rates for all that stuff. It's not the legislators. I could be wrong, but I'm pretty sure it's Pura because they're the agency that has a lot to do with this, with solar, how it's going to be regulated, the biodigesters and all of this stuff. That's all coming under but the people that they're finally getting into Pura are coming in with more open-minded about how this whole renewable energy needs to go forward. And this young lady here, I apologize on your name. I keep losing it. But what they're doing is to create this. So with her in this Fort Hill Farms in our area, it's going to probably help us down the road to expand better, to get other people to understand, especially homeowners, that if you want to, try to save energy, and like Alvin built his house very well. I built this house in 1977, with the energy efficient, whatever we had to do back then. And I'm doing decent with the savings. I put in a generator and everything about 6 years ago because of these power outages, but I had a generator in this house since 1977 because 1956, and Alvin will probably remember it, this whole town was just about underwater. So, we learned from that, but the fees, I think we should have some control over it. Especially for somebody that's trying to do something in this town as a business and farming and everything. And, sometimes we need to keep the state out of it because when they do get their hands in on it, it can make it worse. But we'll see what happens in the next year or two. Changes are coming, but we'll see how it goes. Again, my compliment.
What I just heard is kind of a clarification of what I was reaching for in my first question is how do we get the municipality? How do we get our administrators in this town more focused on helping to move these things forward? And there are programs that can only be attained with state or federal funds. Oh, well, maybe the power companies could put up some money too, but mostly, we have to find ways that we can do it within the borders of the town of Thompson. And that whatever incentives we can find to load into this document to get people thinking in those directions over the next 10 years will help to achieve the success that I just heard Mr. Lincoln talking about.
Well, there's a website called sustainablecT.org. And
yeah, I've looked at that in the past. You're right.
They have all kinds of grant applications for various things for sustainable design. And I know they say who's eligible or whatever, but I think with I'll use the word, a little magic, you know, in the case of Fort Hill Farms here, you know, if we were supporting this initiative, we could have been like, okay, well, there's a grant for that. And, you know, and I know it's not a town-owned thing, but we're trying to negotiate here. We could at least do a solid and make the call to sustainablecT.org and be like, hey, what can we do? Is there a different path that we could take here? You know, to like really support the local business in town and get these financing packages. Now, I know it's hard to get grants, and I say that it's like this simple little thing. And I'm sure Tira could give us a whole thesis on grant submissions.
Yeah, Kai's and I and Kai's engineer actually submitted a grant to try to clear those, which I thought it was going to be a slam dunk because it was specific to biodigesters, right? And I'm thinking, well, how many of these things could there be?
Sure. Yeah.
Turns out that there were 104 applications for this EPA program, and I think they awarded 10 or 12 of the requests. So they are very competitive.
Yeah, and I know that, but the thing is, like, how many other people are going to do that in town that don't know that? We just need to be some more supportive, like you just were, Tira, and applying for those grants and showing the initiative and drive to really build a sustainable community, right? And we could talk about it in this PoCD. You know, go to sustainablecT.org and see what's available for you.
We are members of Sustainable CT. We're just not certified, essentially because I'm a sustainability team of one. I can't upload our actions with the kind of regularity that I'd like. So essentially every summer when they get a new intern, I data dump a bunch of stuff on them and say, upload this and let me know when we're certifiable. I mean, I'm certifiable, but that's a whole different.
Sure.
Anyway, moving on. 16.3, renewable energy. And this is as far as I got, except for the first sentence of something under the anaerobic digester. Renewable energy is most commonly discussed in terms of its potential to reduce future rates of climate change. As implied in the name, renewable energy sources are generally those which are self-sustaining, such as solar, wind, water, or geothermal, needing only technology to harness them for our use. These sources are also carbon neutral. Another category of renewable energy is that generated from various organic sources, wood or other forms of biomass, or biogas produced from sources such as anaerobic biodigestion. These sources are renewable in that they can be constantly produced by cultivation and harvesting or as a byproduct of agricultural processes. They are not necessarily carbon neutral, but they generally release lower amounts of carbon into the atmosphere than fossil fuels. In all cases, switching to or supplementing energy generation with renewable sources has many benefits for both public and private users. In addition to reducing overall carbon emissions, the technologies associated with producing renewable energy have increasingly driven job creation, and switching to or supplementing with renewable energy sources provides significant cost savings for users over time. Renewable energy sources also have the socio-political benefit of being produced closer to their point of use, if not precisely in situ, then from local or regional installations. The result is less reliance on foreign trade and any potential moral hazards that arise from energy dependence on regimes with questionable human rights records. Closer to home, residential solar panels with battery backup can help lighten the burden for individual households during lengthy service interruptions due to weather or other emergencies. In April 2020, Bloomberg published the report Solar and Wind, Cheapest Sources of Power in Most of the World. In addition to finding that average costs worldwide for solar and wind generated energy had declined below that of fossil fuel energy production, large countries such as the United States, China, and Brazil had seen even better reductions than the average. Quoting here, a decade ago, solar was more than $300 a megawatt hour and onshore wind exceeded $100 per megawatt hour. Today, onshore wind is $37 per megawatt hour in the US and $30 in Brazil, while solar is $38 in China, the cheapest sources of new electricity in those countries. Despite this development, as seen in the US EIA data, Connecticut currently generates only 5.5% of its electricity from renewable sources. The state has a goal of reaching 48% of its power sourcing from renewables, with at least one major offshore wind installation coming online in the near term. Nonetheless, a wide gap remains between current levels and the goals for the region. In 2014, Thompson signed on to the Clean Energy Communities Pledge, an initiative of the Clean Energy Finance and Efficiency Fund and the Connecticut Energy Efficiency Fund. As a part of that non-binding pledge, the town committed to procuring 20% of its electricity for municipal use from renewable sources. To date, the town has not entered into any power purchase agreement with any commercial solar energy producer. There have been some proposals made for solar fields within Thompson, which would in turn generate power for the town, but to date, each of them has met with significant obstacles. Shortly before COVID-19, a conversation had been initiated with Connecticut Green Bank regarding their solar municipal assistance program. Under that initiative, town-owned sites are reviewed by consultants from that program for suitability for solar installation. Although the response to COVID interrupted follow-up with Connecticut Green Bank, it is recommended that the town reopen that conversation and identify appropriate sites to add solar collection. In early conversations, the public library was identified as a location with high potential suitability. The public school campus has also been singled out as having potential for the addition of solar, but both of these structures require significant roof repair before any installation would be feasible. Therefore, it is recommended that installation of solar collectors be prioritized for those buildings once their roof replacements have been scheduled. What do you got, guys? Mr. Building Committee.
Well, I will say at the end there, just because I caught the last sentence, kind of struck a nerve with me, is the school. I was actually recommending that you do not put it on the roof. We're going through a roof replacement project next summer on the school, and there's plenty of south-facing fields that would allow a solar installation at the school. So I don't know if you want to mix in field use at the school.
Yeah, I don't mind doing it. I know that there were some, from what I do understand about what's been going on up there in the building committee, weren't the loud voices in the room essentially insisting that it go on the roof?
Yes.
Yeah, it was moving in that direction. But we did draw up plans showing it in the fields as well. And that was encouraged.
So you have a viable possible plan for that.
There were two, actually. There were two viable plans.
The one main one is on the side of the the so-called Mary Fisher School, where that used to be the soccer field and the baseball field and everything. And there was just enough acreage there to put in a 1 megawatt and be able to create a 1 megawatt. And it was looked at where you'd be able to put panels on the side of the hill going down towards Route 12 into the old tennis court too, right up to there. And Brian and I looked that whole thing over and could have fit, and it would have had a short route with the cables and everything going up the hill, right over the roof, right out to the what was it, right to those two electrical rooms in the distance. Because remember when we looked up at behind the track and everything, the distance of the cable and everything would have cost more money than putting in the system.
Yeah, it was a little bit of a run, but
yeah.
I'll close with this. I'm very supportive of that group that you just mentioned there, Tira, about re-engaging them on these conversations. So I guess my overarching point to you here is I like everything that you wrote here. I don't have a problem with a single word. And actually, I want it to be added onto to promote more conversations to get people in the door to educate us on what's viable.
Well, Brian, I certainly don't mind having a specific exemplar of options for a couple of reasons. The most immediate one being, if we show that we've explored options, it can get future iterations of the building committee or the board of selectmen or whomever continually thinking, because these boards do in fact change now and then, and attitudes towards one project versus another change or can evolve. And so if we have something that is articulated and public, it gives people the opportunity to comment on it, show support for it. So if that's something that you can sort of summarize to me, just in a paragraph to send to me that I can add, that's fine. A question I have based on what you guys just said, you said the former baseball and soccer fields, they are defunct. They don't get used at all. They're not usable.
All it's being used for right now is so the grammar school kids can go out there and run around and play or whatever. But it's not. When they put that school in, they took better than a third of the field away. So it wasn't big enough to support a baseball, to play baseball, whatever. So that's why everything was built up in the back by the Teague building.
Yeah, there was another piece of property behind where the track is going down into the, I'll call it the ravine there.
Ravine, that's inland. I went with Myler. I got all the information on that, and that would be all inland wetlands, and it all would depend on the time of the year you want to put it in.
Yeah, that was the second option, and I do believe a portion of that land was owned by someone else, but they were quote unquote willing to work with us.
Correct.
At that time, right? I don't want to shed too much information here, but that was the second option.
Let me ask another question, and just because there's always a third option, especially for buildings that have big parking lots, which is raised panels over parking areas. Was that ever looked at or discussed?
Looked at that. Very costly, and I think the perception of ice buildup on solar panels falling on cars was squashing that idea. Never mind the just general cost factor, right? And just there was a fourth option, taking away the little. I say little. It was a large piece of area where the elementary school uses for the track and field. I'll call it the soccer field over next to the parking lot. That's a perfect area for solar panels. It's south facing, but that was squashed because of its utilization, right? So
it is an actively used space.
It was an
for the benefit of the kids.
Yeah, and also as a sidebar, late in the discussions when we were talking about solar panels, I did bring up virtual net metering. Virtual net metering is used by Woodstock quite a bit. And they've had quite a good success with that, just in general, for people on the line to know.
Isn't Sandy Hook the school, the gentleman that I think I spoke to out there in Sandy Hook? Yeah,
I can't remember his name. He wasn't using virtual net metering. He was doing PPA agreements.
Oh, okay. Right. But what did they have? They had what? The old transfer station in the landfill and everything.
Yeah, they were using landfill. Yep. Areas. Yep. I think he was trying to do methane gas production too, there, energy production as well, similar to what Kai's is doing.
That's something that we should look at. At least 15 years ago, they were doing that over in Rhode Island at the central landfill. Might have been 20 years ago. And I don't know how much methane is being generated at the capped over section when we had the landfill in town. That was before I moved here. But the surface area above that is ideal for a solar farm. And I think that we need to look at the plot map, the area around the school and around Teague. There's additional town-owned property there, and there are several other sites that are town-owned, which might be conducive and could be brought into a more cohesive program for the whole town. That's why I was thinking maybe we could provide an option for Eversource for where people in the town of Thompson could say, hey, I want to buy my electricity from the town of Thompson. And then it just goes through Eversource lines.
Yeah, that's generally the way the virtual net metering works is, let's just say that, in Thompson, we decide to put a solar field there, you could sell it back to Eversource and then people buy it virtually, so that's kind of the way that works as well. But anyway, there's a lot to talk about.
Would it actually be sold to Eversource, or Eversource is a transmission company? They don't make any electricity. They just transmit it.
That's correct. And that's what I'm saying. They just will redistribute that electricity.
Yeah.
I don't want to pretend that I know every little in and out of how they distribute the electrical, but it works in that general sense.
Yeah, and that point that I raised about the town-owned property around the school, I was looking at a possibility of a mountain bike path along the electric right-of-way. Eversource will allow that, but we'd have to work out a conservation easement with the people that actually own the property. But there's a lot of town-owned property up there on the hill up above the town hall and beside the school and beside Teague, quite a bit of it. And most of it is either open and underutilized. Some of it's wooded, but who was it about a half an hour ago that pointed out that the new designs for solar farms are on the ground or ground level or slightly elevated and on a pivoting pedestal that will let AI take advantage of the tracking of the sun. Geez, we're right on the edge of this. If we can just figure out a way to push it through town hall.
That was
plenty of notes here, guys. Anybody have anything else on this section before we turn it over to open discussion? And Kai's is really next up on both of these sections to do a lot of contributing. So anything else on what is here that we want to add, edit, or delete before I give Kai's the reins?
Well, just in general, I'll provide some stuff on the side to you, Tira, just upon what I'm talking about here. So I'll do that.
That'd be helpful for me. I like specific examples. I think they're helpful for people to understand, what is being proposed when we talk about these things. That's part of why I say a lot of this is just too general, right? Because I am the last of the great generalists. I have no specific knowledge of any of this stuff. I come in and I just try to understand the logic and the through line, but I can't draw an architectural site. I can't, I can't say with technical precision how any of these particular things does or would work. So yes, Brian, that's a long way of saying yes, please do that. Okay, Kais, you're up. What would you like us to say in a 10-year document about anaerobic biodigestion and its benefits and opportunities here in Thompson?
Oh, gosh.
No pressure. No pressure.
No pressure. Obviously we're the only dairy farm left in Thompson. But, it would be nice if the surrounding towns would be supportive also. And that more digesters in the area could be also, incorporated. I know that's not in Thompson, but I'm just ranting. But one other thing is food waste, is how can we use homeowner food waste without it a concern on our end? Do you know what I mean? Like what, we don't, no offense, but we don't want to take homeowner food waste because we don't know what they're putting in that food waste, or that, you know, in their digester is like a stomach. If you upset it, you're in trouble. So how can we reduce waste here in Thompson? You know, could we take in food waste from homeowners? Is that something that we could do, or could we work better with the restaurants and your local, you know, grocery stores in the area, or, you know, retail stores that sell food waste or food that goes to waste? And how could we reduce that?
Have you set up any agreements, delivery agreements with anybody yet, Kais?
Yes, yes. I think we have, there's less, I think Kinsella is one of them. And I can't think of the others, but we have a few. But those are big, those are like, you know, 18-wheelers pulling in once a week.
Right.
You know, so, and that's from big box stores like Walmart. You know, when Walmart, you know, not Walmart, I'm sorry. Willimantic Waste is one of them. And they were gonna bring in some food waste, Coke products. I don't know where Kinsella gets their products from. But you know, Coke is, I'm not, no offense, I'm not supportive of soda, but I'm supportive of soda for the digester. Because it loves soda.
Yeah.
It doesn't have any teeth, so.
Have you checked in with the Superior Bakery or the bakery
So
in?
we, Tier put us in contact, and with everything going on out back, we were due for a tour, and then it fell, on their end, it fell through. And then with Thanksgiving, with our tour on Friday, we had a private tour for our investors. It just, my life has gotten hectic.
Yeah.
So I was hoping after Thanksgiving, not saying everything's going to slow down, but at least Thanksgiving will be behind us.
Okay.
I'll try to reconnect on that too, Kais. I think about that every few days, and you know, I don't want to pester either one of you, so I haven't circled back around, but I will.
I have an email from her waiting to be answered, but it's on me that I need to just sit down and answer emails.
Sure, I might be able to help with that from my background in the food industry. Kais, what about the yard waste or the compost stuff that's currently being flipped over at the transfer station? Could that be fed into your system?
Can I ask what is in that?
Well, mostly I see leaves and grass cuttings and things like that. I know when I take over yard waste, that's what it is. It's
Right.
cuttings from my wife's flower garden or yard leaves that we don't mulch up here. And I see a lot of that there. And I know I don't put any chemicals on my garden or lawn, but I wouldn't say that nobody does. So,
Right.
But,
All right. I'm writing that down. I don't know. I know that taking, like hay and straw, the mixers can't handle that.
okay.
Because it will get wrapped around the mixers.
Yeah.
So But I'm not sure on leaves and grass clippings. I don't want to say yes and I don't want to say no.
Yeah, I just thought of that as a biomass, a big amount of,
I hear you.
okay.
Yeah, well, that would be high cellulose, low sugar content, and
Right.
you're looking for high sugar content, right, Kai?
Exactly. The one time.
Yeah, sure, I'll get to you about some of the bakeries and things I know about.
Okay. What about the school? Have you tried to get in touch with them about diverting food waste from the school? I mean, to sort of close the system?
I have not. I haven't not reached out to them because I don't know who I would reach out to. The only thing with the school is, one, who would deliver it? Two, is it not packaged? Because as of right now, we do not have a depackager here on the farm. So if we had a depackager, we could take various like bottled things or enclosed things, and the depackager would puncture it and then empty it out.
Well, I think the first step would be talking to Melinda, of course, as superintendent. I know West Hartford recently put in a food waste separation protocol. I don't know where their end product goes,
Right.
but they are definitely doing it at a school level. So I know it can be done at a school level, and there's precedent for it. So let me see what I can find out there.
Yeah, I would love to see that
I agree.
happen. That's a really nice connection, actually.
I agree.
So with
Yeah,
this,
and I feel pretty strongly that you could get Lord Thompson Manor and Anya on board with that. Again, with just a matter of having the conversation, right? Because they are generating food waste, and it is definitely unpackaged. It's whatever's left at the end of service.
Right.
Instead of going in one bin, if it goes in separated bins.
Right.
And yes, and I hear that delivery is the problem throughout.
Right.
But that sounds like a solvable problem to me.
Okay. That sounds good.
and as supportive as Anya is to what they're doing in town and rebuilding up on the hill there, I mean, it just looks magnificent. I have no doubt that they would be supportive of
Right.
this effort. No doubt in my mind.
We could figure something out.
Yeah, that definitely sounds like a solvable problem to me. Not, maybe not solvable tomorrow, but
Right.
something can be put together, I'm sure.
Right.
What else do we want to say here about this project? I mean, you pointed out, of course, that you're the only dairy farm left. And as Joe has brought up either earlier today or in past sessions, part of this document, of course, it's for our use to set our own priorities, but it's also sort of tooting the town's horn when we get the chance to do so.
Right.
I mean, it's a unique operation regionally. You're the only woman-led operation, right, of its kind in the area.
There is another one on the other side of Connecticut. Her family, it's not just her, but it's all, she has her father and her, her family, she's, it's called Cowpots, Freund's Dairy Farm. And they started theirs. They're the other digester in Connecticut, but they don't sell electricity. They just sell cow manure that's composted into cow pots. And those have gone nationally. So that's the other digester, but it's the oldest digester in Connecticut. But we're an anaerobic digester, so we're the first in Connecticut. So it's definitely deep, and NRCS have been very supportive, but they have also been very hard to get through. The permits, if you talk about the town permit, oh, that's nothing compared to what we've had to deal with through DEEP and NRCS.
That's- They got nobody in, and what's being built, the first for them, so that they're
Right.
going learning
Yeah.
curve.
You've
You're
been the guinea,
yeah.
you're the guinea pig in this situation.
Well, yeah.
Exactly. And
Yeah,
that's what Pete wanted. And that's okay, you know, that we were the guinea pig. It just sucks.
Yeah.
Because we've put.
And there is state legislation that mandates diversion of food waste, right?
Yes, up to so many miles, or if you're like yada, 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 with however many miles to the farm, you have to deliver to the digester. And then, the only thing, and what we're hoping is we would like to change. So, milk trucks are exempt from, weight on 18 wheelers, but food waste is not exempt. So you can only do like 6,000, you can only go to is it 6,000? I don't know what the weight is, but
Wheeler.
if we can expand that weight so that, like, I don't know what Massachusetts is, whether they have a weight limit or not, but we could take in more food waste from various places if the weight of the trucks could go up. You know, if it wasn't such a, if there wasn't a limit.
The limit that sets for the trucks in the DOT is standard throughout the country. Massachusetts, Connecticut, they all follow the same standard. What are you talking, an 18-wheeler, a 6-wheeler, or a 10-wheeler, or you know, a triaxle, or truck, or you know, 18-wheeler? You're talking 82,000 is the maximum they can haul. That includes the load and the what they call the load and the weight of the gross vehicle weight of the unit. So yeah, they can carry up to 30,000. Some of them sometimes 40,000, depending on what food waste is considered pound, so much per pound per foot. And that dictates.
There is a limit on what we can bring in, but milk trucks are exempt.
Well, a milk truck, well, if you're talking a tractor trailer milk truck, which you see being hauled all over to like Hood and Gorelick and everything, those guys are hauling 30,000 to 40,000 per load.
Right,
So,
and they're exempt, but I was just in this conversation with Willimantic Waste, and they said, well, we could bring in more, but being as you're in Connecticut and not in Mass doesn't have an exempt on a truck weight limit. Yeah, so that's something that we'll have to look up because I don't know the actual details.
So that's a state regulation.
Yeah.
Well, they go state regulation. They go by the bridge laws. Well, the state can modify it or make it stronger. Make it a little. But they use the bridge laws. That's what it's was all designed by, was the bridge laws.
Right.
The weight. That's why they say the truck's got to be 45 feet long. This is when you're going over bridges or whatever, and it also helps the roads because you spread the weight out.
Right.
Massachusetts.
That's just
permit.
Well, Fort Hill Farm doesn't have any bridge limitations between 395 and the farm.
I'm not disagreeing with you there, but they use the bridge laws for complete road distribution of the weight of the vehicle on your tires. In other words, if you
Yeah. So I'm brainstorming. I'm trying to help figure out an answer to that because she's right. If they can take out X number of pounds of milk, they ought to be able to bring in that same amount of biodegradable waste that they can run through their system.
Right.
And
And
shouldn't need brain surgery to figure it out, but I don't know where to go with it.
And something else that helps is we're right on the Mass Rhode Island line. And that's, a lot of people are excited about being able, you know, they don't have to travel all the way to Hartford, or they don't have to you know, they can just travel right over the border to bring us food waste.
Yeah.
You know, which is awesome.
Well, I know somebody up in Massachusetts that services a lot of wholesale bakeries, and I don't know where he's taking all that stuff now, but I'm going to reach out and try to get in touch with him in the next few days.
Okay. Tier has well, you have my email, so in that email, you should, yeah.
I will.
Okay.
So Tara, is it the intent of 16.4 just to utilize the existing documents or information that Fort Hill Farms put together to get their approvals to kind of educate?
Yeah, I think, that original Instant Expert Just Add Water presentation that I took to the Board of Selectmen for them from last year. And I certainly have the grant that Kai's engineer and there was another engineer
so
who helped cite it.
Yeah.
They're write-ups. And I do want to move on to the last two topics here without going too much past 9. So last chance, Kais, what else do you want us in here on the topic of the biodigester? And then I'm going to keep you sort of talking about solar siting and agricultural while we're all here together too.
Right. You know, I think we've hit the nail on the head. I can't think of anything else.
Okay.
I think,
you know, you and I have talked about this together a lot, and sometimes what happens is that you take pieces of information for granted as understood, that when you go and present it out into the world, you know, people don't have those pieces.
Right.
So in some ways, maybe you and I aren't even the best ones to say, hey, what about this? But I do want to move on to the other topics. I will pull that old presentation and those grants and push something else together. If you want to send me anything that you want to say, Kais, after thinking about it, feel free to do that.
Something else just to add is, you know, we'll have a composted waste, I shouldn't say that, composted solid at the end for your garden also that we can sell. So, you know, if I know down to earth garden design and maintenance, they're looking to come in after Thanksgiving and to work out a deal with us on how they can incorporate some composted waste, composted solid into their, you know, putting that into their customers' gardens for the future.
Yep.
That's so, you know, if, you know, if other, you know, Sunset Nurseries, you know, needs any compost, we got plenty, you know, and it's dry and it doesn't stink. And that will be after.
Yeah, I think
that will be post digester.
Yeah, I think that diversification angle is also an important one, that it isn't just one thing that's happening up there. I'm really into this idea throughout this document of presenting the town as an ecosystem, not just an ecosystem the way people understand it as the landscape in which they live and the pretty birds and the bugs and the fish, but you know, the human ecosystem and making things sustainable and self-sustaining. So this sort of thing bolsters that argument.
We've as Pete has said in the past, as Pete had always mentioned, was, you know, the milk is not just important from the cows, it's also the other end, it's the cow manure. And so we're producing cow power. So
that brings up one last interesting point. Is there anything that would be coming out of the Thompson Water Pollution Control Facility that could be used? from the
I don't,
wastewater treatment plant.
I think our plan was not to take in human waste.
Well, okay, I just asked because,
No, I'm glad you asked. Our
Sludge
plan
is a tricky one for sure.
Yeah, our plan is to spread this on our fields. So we're trying to keep it, you know, our NPK, you know, we have to follow regulations with our NPK on our fields.
So let's pivot that then, still on the topic of agriculture, but back to solar siting in agriculture. And Kais, I'm glad you're here for this too, because I didn't even start really thinking about this until I got that call from you last year in the spring when you lost a grazing field. And I think that was for solar development, and that was what prompted a whole series of conversations. Now, planning and zoning did articulate some preferences for combined uses, you know, agricultural uses where solar farms are proposed on viable farm soils. Now, Judy Rondo and Carolyn both have expressed strong concerns about, you know, solar use of agricultural lands at all. I think there is a strong argument to say that if a farmer wants to monetize, you know, their land, there are a limited number of ways that can be done. And if agriculture on its own isn't feasible, I'd rather see solar fields, solar panels that can be decommissioned than a subdivision, which is forever. But I'd like to hear your thoughts on the topic in general, and then toss it out. I think, you know, I suspect Dennis might have some thoughts on this as well. But you go first, Kais.
No, it just, you know, we've lost a few agricultural fields to solar, and, you know, it really puts a damper because, you know, you don't own, you know, and hey, it's not our, you know, it's not our land, so it's not our choice. It's up to the landowner, but I just wish that, you know, there was an option to, you know, that this landowner would have said, oh, do you want to buy the land from us, or do you want us to, or would you allow, or is the land agriculture, does the land give you a good crop? You know, if not, we're going to put on solar field. We're going to put a solar, you know, area in, you know, but you know, she contacted me like several months after they had already been planning this and said, you know, we never thought to contact you prior to the solar planning, but we're contacting you now to let you know that 7 months later, we're planning to put solar on it. And we had planned on taking several crops off that year. You know, and that also, all our fields go into account for the digester. We have so much, you know, they say how much land do you have, how much is spreadable for manure, you know, and that all accounts to the digester, which is a plan through NRCS called the CNNP, the Conservation Nutrient Management Plan. So when we lose a field, you know, it really puts a damper on how are we going to, you know, where are we going to put that manure, you know, if we lose that field. And it also sucks seeing an agricultural, you know, a field getting used up that could, you know, was open space at one time.
Okay. I mean, just for whatever it's worth, we did, and Dennis, I guess this is where I'll ask you to chime in, but mostly because the pushback that I got on this prior to, you know, Judy's email that she sent out, was I had shown the new regs on solar to David Held, because he had helped, he and Alvin had written the prior iterations, and he was not a fan of them at all. He didn't, you know, and part of that I think is for sort of practical, personal, professional reasons, but he raised that specter of, well, if you tell somebody they can't do whatever they want in one way, they'll just do something worse, which in this case we were talking about subdivision. What we did do was write in for the larger scale operations that fall within the purview of planning and zoning to regulate, and that's a very narrow band. It's essentially anything up to whatever that megawatt, I think, what is it, 1 megawatt before it goes over to Connecticut Siting Council, but larger than for personal use. So you're talking, I think the parcels we were looking at were like 8 to 10 acre parcels. If those were prime agricultural soils, that, yeah, you could put solar panels on them, but there had to be a 1-to-1 ratio of agricultural use preserved. So just to use a 10 acre plot as an example, you could either just plain old cover 5 acres, or we suggested that you could cover 10 acres, but under those, under the panels, you had to allow for agricultural activities such as beehives or sheep grazing or fruit or vegetable crops that lend themselves to hand harvest. So I guess I'm curious about your perspective as somebody looking at that from the engineering point of view, you know, how you would approach that, or what you think a pitfall might be there. Oh, did we lose Dennis? Oh, it looks like we lost Dennis. I was talking to Dennis Blanchett, but it looks like we lost him. I don't see him on the list anymore. Crumbs. Well, I'll toss it over to you, John Lenke, because I know that you attended those webinars, and Alvin, you might have too, a few months ago when I sent that link around. What did you come away with on that?
From what I gathered, and like I said, I downloaded it so I could go back to it, you know, all the different things and stuff. The person up in upstate New York that raises sheep, and they use the sheep to bring them into the solar panels, but those panels were built a little lower to the ground, so you really can't get underneath it to keep them, the grass from growing up high or the hay. That was the problem, and it was interfering with the panels. So they finally got smart and raised them up higher. So you could, like I said, up in near Williamstown, I can't think of the town below it, but I mean, it was a setup just like Fort Hill Farms of what they're doing, and they found that by using sheep or letting cattle in, or whatever, to keep the grass down, and it was cheaper in the long run. They move them around. It was excellent, and they still get to do, you want to call farming, if you want to call it that. The place gets fertilizer, but it's a good thing. I still think it's up to the farmer or the farm itself to decide how they want to do it. We shouldn't dictate to them, but we should be able to help them in any way so they can continue because we got to stop losing our farms. It's getting tough. And I'm for it. I think it should be done that way. It should, give them some leeway to a point, you know, let's help them out, you know, like with planning and zoning. That's what we need to do. I'm for it. I'm 100% for it, you know.
Alvin, I think you had some thoughts on this too when we put it in the new book.
Sighting, solar sighting?
Yeah.
Well, my choice would be, gravel pits that have been cleaned up. To use prime farmland for solar siting, I'm totally against.
So really, we're talking about incentivizing reclamation of gravel pits with solar, is what
Exactly.
what you're saying is preferable. Yeah, which I think we would all
Yes.
actually agree with anyway. The solar siting on agricultural lands comes up purely because farmers want to monetize property
Now,
in
Alan and
diversified
you
ways.
yourself are already thinking about that one, but
Yeah.
What was that again? I didn't catch it. Did he
I
go
think
into?
Brian just froze up. I think he just froze up.
Yeah.
His image on my screen looks very still.
Yes, it is. I can see it from here. But what did he say, Tara? I didn't catch it all.
Yeah, I didn't catch it all either because
I'm-
he started to freeze up. There he is. Oh, we lost him again. Joey Martino, you've been quiet for a while. Let's see. What are your thoughts on some of this stuff? I know you dialed into this for a reason, and I'm not sure I've heard your reasons yet.
I'm waiting for the energy conservation part because I love to talk about LED lights that we had almost none of them deployed 10 years ago, and they're coming on strong now. I like electric vehicles and some of the development that's happened in that area. And I think there's many things the town can do to advocate for recharging centers. We can look at some of that. I know we're not Los Angeles here, but I get the idea that we can have some. So there's aspects like that I think we should talk about on the conservation side.
Okay.
That's a good point.
Santos, do we have you back yet?
I don't know. Do you?
Yeah, we do now. There you are.
I just wanted to add that I feel like might be a slippery slope with the gravel mine and the solar, because I feel like it'll just continue to promote more gravel mining operations. And as you all know, that are on the zoning meetings.
It comes down to, again, it's going to come down to the owner of the property, what he wants to do with it. If he wants to just bring, once he mines it and everything again, and if he wants to sell it off and whoever buys it wants to put a house or whatever, that's, I agree with Alvin, that would be a good place
That
because
becomes
you
a
really
problem.
you strip the land, but it's still, it's like almost we're dictating to these people. No, you can't do this. You can't. We should be doing what we can to help the farmers, because the farmers are the ones that are taking the hit financially. So they don't want to lose their farm. So they're going to go whatever route. That's why they've been selling the land off to people to put in subdivisions there because they're getting good money for X amount of land. But do they really want to sell it? No. But if there's a way for them to keep it, and if it's solar is one of those things to help them get some income, and still have use of the land, it's a good thing. It becomes a win-win situation. And I grew up in this town. I worked on the farms that used to be a Princess Farm out in Woodstock. Sherman's Farm and a few others out there. I used to work out there as a kid, milking cows, picking hay, do whatever, walking in the cow manure, whatever. It's it's part of me, but if you're gonna tell somebody you can't tell them to put solar panels or solar fields on their property and, for a source of income, I think we're getting a little out of hand in that. We should be helping.
Right. Well, that's how we arrived at what we did arrive at. I think Judy Rondo's concerns, and I think they are important, is that we may not have sufficiently articulated standards for those installation in terms of erosion controls, vegetative cover, things that I know some places have had trouble with. I 100% know that places have had trouble with solar installations where they strip off the vegetative cover and they plunk the things down, and then they get all kinds of sedimentation and runoff and erosion from the sites. So I do think that heightened standards should be explored.
I'm not going to disagree with you there, Tara, but I could take you right up here in Southbridge and show you what a 5, 10, 15, 20 megawatt system that was put in the last 5 years, 6, 7, 8 years. And before they could strip the topsoil and everything, they had to have a engineering thing for riprap, for water runoff and everything. All had to be in place. Then they did. Then they can go in and start strip X amount of area and start putting everything in, and then the loom went back. Anybody wants to, I'll give you a ride. A guy I know very well. He's leasing out 5 acres of land. Not 5 acres. He's got a 5 megawatt on his property, and so they took almost 30 acres or something like that he leased out to him with a 25-year lease with an option of 75. He's going to get $75,000 a year. He was telling me he's good. Him and his kids are going to be good for life. But it was all the engineering had to be done, and this is in Southbridge. So you have to have an engineering. DEP requires wherever it's going to be built on a hillside or whatever, you're going to have some type of engineering for the water runoff to control that, so it goes into a detention pond, if you want to call it that, where all the water gets gathered in and run off, so it don't go running down the street and all this other stuff. There are where we could put that into regulations where that would be a protocol. We need the engineering to help the farmer so they don't lose any type of product. There's a lot of little things, but we got to take baby steps. We have to look at what other things going on. Town of Milford, they was supposed to have a big project go in and everything in. And the company that come in, stripped the land, and all of a sudden they found out it was whatever, and they walked away, and they had a big DEP had to go in there and spend all kinds of money to get it straightened out. If we can do that, I think it's very helpful. But to tell a farmer, of some farm, that they can't put solar panels or whatever they want to do to the property, I'm sorry. I see.
Well, and I think Blackie said something similar, either in an actual meeting or just a casual conversation. I'm hearing things that I think we have actually already said, but they are clarifying for me. One is, as we're describing this stuff, we want to describe siting for solar as a preferred way for gravel operations to reclaim. In other words, we're not encouraging the gravel operations themselves, but in as far as they exist, and we know we have them, and we know we're always going to have them, that possibly we can express a preference for reclaiming those via solar installation with certain kinds of reclamation measures put in place. In other words, vegetative cover, erosion controls, yada, yada, and possibly also incorporating those agricultural uses for, you don't need prime agricultural soil to have a beehive, right? You can have that anywhere. You don't need prime agricultural soil to graze sheep. You just need something that'll grow grass. So to suggest these as possibilities. In the instance of threatened soil types, we did identify those soil types or land types. We did identify those in the new zoning regulations as general open space, prime farmland or farm soils, and whatever the core forest, I think is the third one. And in all of those instances, I think we more or less prohibited that in core forest, although I'd have to go back and look, but we posited that you would have to offset those uses in those places by a 1-to-1 ratio. In other words, it's a mitigating effort. You have to leave at least as much as you've taken, and you have to return it to a viable use. And we waived some of the open space requirements in some of the districts to encourage them in those districts, like where we have commercial and industrial stuff cited. So we did do some of that, but I do still think it's tighter. Another thing I think we could articulate is, and again, because this is a non-regulatory document, is encouraging the connection of those agricultural partnerships. Like if somebody comes in who is, let's say it's a farmer with, let's say it's Kai's, let's say it's the O'Learys and the Orrs, and they've got 500 acres and they're feeling the pinch and they want to monetize some of it, but they don't want to lose the land forever. So their solution is, hey, we're going to take, say, 10 of these acres. We're going to put solar panels on them for a period of 20 years, but we're going to continue. We want to continue the agricultural use. So we are either ourselves or we're going to seek another agricultural partner who can utilize that space. So I think there's something that can be articulated in there to say, this isn't just a passive thing that we're saying you can do. We're saying if you want to do this, this is how we'd like you to actually go out and try to do it. Because I think you're absolutely right, John. We can't take away the rights of people to sell their land if they feel that is their choice, or to lease their land if they feel that is how they're going to keep themselves above water. But to maintain the utility of the property, I think, is important. Kais, were you saying something?
I'm not disagreeing with you there. It's just that, the individual still has the right, but I agree with what you just said and a lot of things. I mean, to put a 1 megawatt, you need at least 6, 7, 8 acres, depending on how they can set it up. If it's on a hillside or a hillside to a flat, you're looking at, but I mean, you're talking some good acreage, but if they can still utilize it in any shape or form, let's help them. I agree.
I think one thing that I've heard both of you say in the last few minutes is it really comes down to successful projects are those that were built on a platform of thoughtful regulation. You mentioned one that they went in and everything was done right. You mentioned another one where they went in and stripped off the topsoil and walked away from it. So to me, without even knowing all the background on it, I'd say the one where it was done right, they had the regulations in order, and the one where it was done wrong, they had loopholes. We cannot tell somebody who owns a farm and they're working 80 hours a week and they're looking at the bank coming in to take it away from them, that they cannot that they cannot sell some of it for a gravel mine or mine it themselves, or that they cannot put in solar panels. We can't do that. And even if the O'Learys and the Orrs said, hey, we're not going to do this, the next generation comes in, and then boom, suddenly you got all the neighbors are upset because now they got a gravel mine going in where they thought it was an nice old New England farm. Small New England farms are strapped to try to compete with these big agribusinesses, especially because those big agribusinesses are getting boatloads of money on federal programs that the smaller ones can't. So yeah, we're up against it on 2 or 3 sides. But our goal here is to try to conserve the character of the town. And a lot of that means keeping the open space. And a lot of that means keeping it green and finding smart ways to be able to utilize that. For example, could they put in a combination of a blueberry farm and a solar farm? Maybe. I hadn't thought about that until just a few minutes ago. But I can't tell them that they have to do it that way. I can say we can make a requirement for part of the town's long-range plan that says we want to see these things done. We want to see them pushed at the highest levels of town government, and we want to see them done in a way that doesn't wreck the town while it's being done.
This is Kais. I just wanted to chirp in. I'm not, you know, I'm not telling you to tell, or I'm not telling the landowner to, you know, do them that, you know, they can't do solar panels or whatever. It's sad to see. And, you know, you kind of wish that this landowner would have come to you or us prior, you know, to say, hey, would you just like to buy it? Or would you like to do solar panel, you know, or, you know, vice, or, you know, whatever works, you know, and that may not be the circumstances under all the agreements, but it's just a thought, you know, how can we do better with agriculture and solar panels? One thing I do like what Tier said about, you know, about your comment, you know, what's another diversification on how to bring in money? Something that we are working towards, and it is not an easy process, but hopefully in the years to come that it will become an easier process, is we are selling development rights for quite a few of our land. So which means that land can never be developed and it will always stay farmland or forestry or what have you. Now, I don't know if they support solar panels. You know, if you sell the development rights, I don't know if you can then put, so, I mean, yeah, if you sell the development rights, I don't know if they'll allow you to put solar panels on it. I would assume the solar panels already have to be on it, if that makes any sense. Like, we are not doing any farmland preservation around our digester or our new barn area until we know we are done building. Because they are, you know, obviously they're against building, which is great. But, you know, we'd like to make sure we are ready, you know, for our, you know, we need to get our digester and our new barn up and rolling first before we preserve that area. So we're preserving all the other land around us, and, you know, you get money back from that. But we've been in this farmland preservation for 2 years. And we are hopefully closing by the end of this year on 2 areas, and then 2 areas next year. So it's a lot of, it's a big process. Maybe shouldn't have done 4 properties at once, but what are you gonna do? But we are hoping, you know, okay, so we're doing these 4 properties and we're already thinking, what can we do more of? Do you know, and what can we else sell to Wyndham Land Trust? We've sold quite a bit of land to Wyndham Land Trust. You know, so what else can we do?
Right.
And that might be how can we push for farmland preservation?
So I'm making those notes here, but I'm going to try to pull that back into the section on agriculture, which I already think is a very robust section, but I don't think we talked that much about farmland preservation, so I'm going to carry these notes into that. All right, we're coming up on 9 o'clock, and we have not gotten to the last topic, which is suggested action steps, and I know Joe has been waiting for it. So let's try to just rapid fire bash some stuff out based on what we've talked about tonight. just to put as a series of things we want to say, we recommend the town is going to do these things. So the philosophy is pushed aside. Based on the philosophy, we want to say that we're going to do what? Go.
Local hydro generation, double the capacity.
Got it.
Mine are a little bit more basic. I'll just start with promoting education. I'd like to see number 2, an increase in local efforts to involve sustainable CT program. Review and update land use regs. Again, I know we did that already for ways to promote sustainability and resilience. Just like to reread them again, if that's possible.
Yeah, I mean, that's, Brian, as we've said in some of the other sessions, some of the action steps are reiterative from section to section, but each of them is reiterative for a different reason. So in a couple of places, as you know, I've suggested reviewing the regulations on at least an annual basis to make sure that they continually conform with our goals. Right, so that we don't have to do a gigantic overhaul in another 10 years, that every year we're going to conform the regulations to what it is we're trying to accomplish.
Yeah.
So I've got that here. What else you got, guys?
Keeping up with the times.
Keeping up with the times.
Yeah, well, that's a smart move, and that's why we decided to do what we decided to do in the regs, is so we can stay up on things. And if the things are going to be changing, we need to change with it. We can't wait 10 years. We need to do it then. You know what I mean?
I just want to, like, I use the word promote. It's kind of like what happened last night in zoning with the River Mill project, right? It's about bringing up solar panel use, finding a way to convince that developer to work with, we'll just continue to say Eversource, to be able to sell that power to Eversource back to the town or whatever. And then looking for new ideas as far as like hydro utilization with the little river that runs through the river mill there. It's that type of promotion that I'm talking about.
That's a canal.
That's a good point, because I thought you were talking about something else. I thought you were going back, Brian, to having homeowner education.
Yeah, that's the education portion. I said promote and educate, right? It's promotion with the local businesses and the developers that are going to be coming into town, especially in the redevelopment district that we've outlined, and then educating the homeowners about what's available to them and how to utilize it in the proper way.
And that was a good moment when Dave Poplawski brought that up to the River Mill developer about, what's your plan for renewables? Yeah, that was a good moment.
Yep.
So again, I'm going to come back to prioritizing the philosophy of renewable energy at the town level, and also to see if there's anything that we can do to get a discount from Eversource if electricity is generated in the town, and especially if it's generated on town property, or like Fort Hill, and residents of the town want to buy into that, we should be able to get a discount on the fee of putting it through the wires, because it's only a shorter distance. Those kinds of things, think outside of the box a little bit.
You'll never see a discount. Eversource will never give you a discount.
Well, how about this? I think Charlie brings up a really good point. How about having a representative from Eversource come down and talk to us about how we can get this stuff done, right?
John.
Well, that's Connecticut Green Bank. That's the Eversource program where they talk about these incentive programs.
Okay.
They also have grant programs available for a lot of stuff. It's just a question of asking the right person the right question. So,
Yeah.
and as far as what John was just saying, never say never, because yes, it might take a while, but we can keep pushing at it, keep pushing at it, keep pushing at it. Finally, boom, it's through. I'm an optimist.
We know, Charlie.
I'm a realist. I'm a realist. But no, it's all good points. Everything is good points, but it's gonna come down to how. I think we have to take the initiative. You just said the magic word. We need to start here. But are we going to get help from the state? Our state representative from 51, who's Rick Hayes, and then we have May Flexer in District 29 for the Senate. I mean, of this area. You got to get on their case and jump on their back a little bit and tell them to start, raising the issues down at the Capitol. That's where it starts.
Well, I can tell you that May is very pro clean energy. I mean, she's always been a big advocate of that. I mean, Hayes, who knows?
I can tell you that Hayes has been.
I do not have flattering. Yeah, I do
Eversource.
not have flattering things to say about Rick Hayes, but that's neither here nor there.
Well, how our personal feelings about the people need to get together. It's got to start someplace, and you gotta hound these people and say, listen, this is the forgotten corner, and I believe, we're the quiet corner, but we're also the forgotten corner, and we need to make our own destiny, and if this is what it's got to take, let's do it. We can talk about it. Right.
And if we don't do it, we're going to become the haunted corner.
Well, there you go.
All of those people that you listed off, and even Joe Courtney, have been very, very supportive. Rick Hayes, May Flexer have all been very supportive of the digester. Joe Courtney has written quite a bit of grants for us. So I'm sure that any one of those would be more than happy to help with this overall.
That's where it starts.
Hey, taking it back to a homeowner level, Alvin, going back to your personal story there, and the observation that Connecticut building codes do allow one to build and go off grid. Is that easy for a homeowner to figure out on their own?
It could be, if they're versed in a lot of energy matters, like I was back many, many years ago. It's more than possible to be off grid.
But it's not easy for, say, an average homeowner to look at building codes and say, oh, this allows me to do this. They need
not
guide.
really. No, it would have to be a new structure. It couldn't be a retrofit.
Guidance on new
But it's
structure.
possible, right, Alvin?
What's that?
But it's possible. Is it
For a homeowner? Yeah.
Yes.
It's possible. Yeah.
If he's got the right tools in front of him and he knows, like you said, it comes down to asking the right questions to the right authority, say like the building inspector or whatever it takes, or whatever the state statutes are and everything, which comes down to the building inspector's job, which you used to have. So that's where you come in. We'll just say that's where you could help the people say, okay, this is where you got to go, or the planning and development director, could send you down the right path. I agree with that. I like it. I was like Alvin, we kind of pretty much did what we thought we going to need because of the power outages back in the day. Sometimes we were out of power. Alvin even testified. Sometimes we were gone without power for 2-3 weeks, sometimes a month at times.
Yep.
and we had to do what we had to do. We were burning wood. That was the only good source of heat, to compensate. So now with this renewable stuff where you can get solar panels or, if we can get Fort Hill Farms to put in a 1 megawatt digester and everything to take care of the town, I'm for it. Get cheaper in.
Something to add. Can you also add in your suggestion action steps, and maybe it was already stated, was sustainability and diversification, if that helps.
Yeah, that would do it.
So it
Yep,
almost
I
sounds
think
like
I know where you're going. I think I know where you're going with that, Kais.
Yep, and I can always elaborate, but I know we're on time, but no, those are the two key words that we try to strive here, so.
It also almost sounds like we want to have hyperlinks somewhere in the body of this segment that says, developers, look here, this is how, if you do this and this and this and this, you can build houses that are off the grid.
There you go.
Well, that's kind of why I asked the question of Alvin, like, well, is it easy for somebody to find? Is it easy for a homeowner or a builder to figure out on their own, how to take advantage of what's allowed to build off grid?
And I think it could be easy, but if this document could put in 3 or 4 hyperlinks, I mean, Sustainable Connecticut is one that I had forgotten about, but, put in these links and say, go to this page, get this document, read this, and you can, heck, a guy could come in and develop a whole housing project that has 10 or 15 houses and not a wire going out to Eversource.
Yeah, Eversource wouldn't let that happen.
Hey, they can't stop it.
No, I'm not saying they can't.
Anybody got anything else to add to these? Martino, you've been quiet again, although you did come right in off the bat with the hydro generation. What else would you posit as an action step?
Got everything I got, Tara.
Oh, you're so good. I think we've got a lot here. I'm going to have a lot of writing to do tomorrow again. So I'm going to call it for tonight. Last topic discussion is Monday for future land use. That's mostly going to be 3 topics: subdivision. I just had it. I don't have it in front of me. I know it was 3 topics. I have once again invited all of the P&Z commissioners, so I hope certainly the members of P&Z who are here can dial into that again on Monday. Off the top of my head, I don't know who else is on that discussion group, but I'll send everything out tomorrow since we've got the long weekend. I'm going to get as much of this into an update of the whole document as I can. It'll come out by 4. After Monday, the first draft is essentially set for content, although there are still edits to be made where things are incomplete. But the points that we're going to be making are going to be set by the end of the discussion on Monday night. So anybody who's on this call, who's going to be on that call, keep that in mind. Look for the stuff to come out tomorrow. And then the month of December, we're going to prioritize all these action steps into one long matrix of short, medium, and long-term goals. Who's going to be responsible for them? What the timeline is. It's non-binding, but that's going to be the structure that we're going to use, and then not think about it again for 10 years. No, that's not true.
Good night,
All right,
everybody.
guys.
I hope you can enjoy Thanksgiving.
We don't have another
Yes.
meeting.
Happy Thanksgiving.
Yep. You too, there, Miss.
Kais, what did you say, Kais?
We don't have another Thanksgiving. We don't have another meeting scheduled, do we?
Just Monday night, and I'll send the link out if you want to be a part of that. There's not for this topic, though.
Okay.
But it is land use.
Well, it is. Yes.
Okay.
if I'm available, I'll do my best to join.
Okay, you'll get the link, so you just do your best.
Thank you.
Good night.
All right, thanks, guys. Good night.
Happy Thanksgiving.
All right, have a good Thanksgiving.
Right.